Mary Ann, can you hear anybody? Hi, Mary Ann. Chief, she has no audio or something.
So, right, so you can start. Mary Ann did have audio.
She's not responding though. Mary Ann, can you hear us? Wave if you can hear us. Mary Ann.
Actually, her microphone is not showing either.
Yeah, I see that. We'll call her and tell her to call in. All right, Mary Ann, you can call in. Do you have a microphone on your computer? It's not showing up. Yeah, join audio. You're not coming through at all. There you go. You're connecting now. Okay. Yep. Hang out just 1 second. All right, is it working? No, it still says it's connecting. So it's on there.
That's definitely not the town clerk. Mary Ann, can you hear us now? Hi, Mary Ann, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
She may need to turn the volume settings up on her computer.
It's showing now that, Mary Ann, it's showing now that you have a microphone.
I unmuted her.
No, she's not muted. So just keep going with the telephone. She's going to dial in with the phone.
All right, I want to just start the meeting then, because
Yep.
getting the agenda out. All right, meeting called to order. Today is Tuesday, April 28th. It is now 6:11 p.m. Town Council Budget Workshop, 1170 Main Street, actually all of West Warwick and all over the state of Rhode Island tonight. I'm not sure if Mary Ann can hear or, speak, so I will take a roll call. Councilwoman Williamson?
Here.
Councilman Licciardi?
All right, did you call? It was showing you had.
Councilman Licciardi?
Here.
Councilman Messier?
Here.
All right.
Council Vice President D'Amico?
Here.
And Council President Johnson
Yes.
is here. There's a quorum on record. Mary Ann, are you all set? All right, well, I'll start with item number 1. Fourth supplemental emergency declaration of the state of emergency extension, Executive Order 2020-1, declaration of state of emergency as amended, will be amended as follows. This executive order shall take effect immediately and remain in full force with the council's approval and shall continue in effect and automatically renew every 7 days until June 4th, 2020, unless discontinued earlier by either the town manager or the town council.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on behalf of the council? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Jason? Jason L.
Yes.
Jay Messier?
Yes.
Councilman D'Amico?
Yes.
Council Williamson?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay,
Dave, can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay, I'll take over. Sorry about that. Town manager overview of the budget process.
Thank you, Marianne. Yes, this budget process this year can be summed up by one word: uncertainty. You know, how will the town?
Hey.
Can you hear me? Yeah, how will the town return to full operations at this point is not known. When and how will the town have a financial town meeting or a referendum? Yeah, that's unknown.
Oh.
Those items, as far as the voter referendum,
I just renamed her, yeah.
will be determined by.
Why wouldn't she be able to come in now?
Chief Barone, you need to put your mic on mute. We can hear you.
I got it. It's on mute.
Okay.
So just at this point, you know, we need more guidance from the governor's office as to the restrictions that are going to be in place. As we know, the governor now is looking to reopen certain aspects of the economy and government services offices. And once the governor starts lessening up on the amount of people that can gather, that may influence, will have a direct influence on the referendum. But at this point, uncertainty is really the name of what we're facing. There's great uncertainty as to what the state budget will be next fiscal year. Going into the pre-COVID-19, it's hard to think about a pre that because it's dominated everything since the early part of March. But the state budget had a $200 million deficit in it. And the governor's proposed budget dealt with that in a various amount of ways. One of the ways reduced our distressed community aid by half, about $400,000. So, but since that time, you know, with the effects of the coronavirus, the state's revenues have fallen off a cliff as as has been often said. The Twin River Casino has ceased to function. Lotteries, tickets are low. State income tax, sales tax have really been affected by the coronavirus and the restrictions on sheltering at home for those who can. So going forward, it leaves communities scratching their heads as to how to proceed and when will we know what the state aid is going to be. Chances are it'll probably be after the many towns and cities adopt their budget process. And again, for us, motor vehicles, that has been something that has been sacred to Speaker Mattiello, but now he's indicating that he's looking at maybe changing the schedule for reimbursement. So cities and towns are going to be faced with, do we send out motor vehicle bills or not? If we send them out and they are too high, then there's a refund. If they're too low, then there may have to be a supplemental tax. So it leaves communities in the dark, and hopefully, the governor's office and the governor knows that. Hopefully we'll have guidance as we progress, in the weeks and months to come. So with that, again, our revenues are based upon the state aid revenues are based upon the governor's proposal in January. Local revenues are based upon what we thought they would be, pre-coronavirus effects on the revenues. On our expense side, we have the request of the school department, which was included as requested. And the school department has been a great partner through the town's fiscal issues in the last 4 or 5 years. So we appreciate that. On the town side, we're estimated with the same fundamental principles the last two have had in the last 2 budgets. Healthcare has been estimated at 5%. As you remember, last year we had a larger increase, which we did at the recommendation, the levels recommended by our healthcare actuary, which at that point were double digit, but were appropriate. And then we see the results of having a lesser increase this fiscal year. Pensions have been budgeted in accordance with the required actual contribution, because as determined by our actuary, and this is something that the council has insisted upon, as well as the administration. So we're on target. We're funding 100% of that required contribution. And all wage benefit and other contractual language changes from the collective bargaining agreements have been incorporated into the budget that's been presented. So overall, the difference between the manager's recommended budget 21 versus the adopted budget 22 is about $4 million, but some of that is offset by additional revenue that's been either state aid or other revenues. So the difference is a local property tax increase of about $2.2 million. Of that, $2.2 million, $800,000 is allocated to support the school system, and 1.4 is allocated to support municipal services. So with that, just to summarize my remarks by commenting on the budget address. And I know some people think I killed a lot of trees unnecessarily with that, and I can certainly understand that. But usually a budget is accompanied by a budget message, and a budget address is the budget message and sort of a state of the town address. And I thought it important to sort of document where the town was, where we were and are, and where we seem to be going, because I think we're in a very positive direction, headed in the right direction. And I always believe from learning from history, and I subscribe from the motto, those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. I think we are on the right track in many areas, and I believe we're going to be continuing on that track. So with that, that concludes my prepared remarks for the overview of the budget process and where we are. And I guess we can go into the departmental hearings.
Any questions for Ernie? Okay. That being said, why don't we go, I know there's a schedule out there, but let's go with the school department first, since that is the largest item on the budget.
All right. School department?
Yo, I see. I'm going to unmute you now.
I believe
Am I
Karen
muted,
has something.
Dave?
Karen, you want to start off?
Sure. Yep. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to come before the Town Council to present the school department's FY21 budget. And I'll just start with saying that I hope everybody's in good health and your families are doing well during this time, to use the town manager's words. It certainly is a time of uncertainty, so that much we know. So I hope everybody's doing okay. So with that, on behalf of the West Warwick School Committee, I'm pleased to report that on February 10th of this year, they voted to approve a balanced budget for the FY21 year, which I present to you tonight. Together, we are one community with one overall budget and common goals of sustaining the town, developing progressive and innovative programming for our students, creating a safe environment for our schools, and supporting all of our citizens. Preparing the fiscal year 21 budget, we had 5 goals. 1, present a balanced budget. 2, support programming and education in the school department. 3, compliance with educational mandates as well as the BEP. 4, continued compliance with pension and OPEB contribution requirements. And 5, the consideration of future budgets. So to go through each goal, number 1, present a balanced budget. This year, the school's overall budget is $62,197,985. And this includes an increased appropriation request from the town of $800,000. So leaving the FY21 budget request allocation from the town being $32,357,516. The FY21 budget is balanced with an increase of 4.8% from FY20 at the amount of $2,831,062. Anticipated state aid or local appropriation and Medicaid reimbursements will support this increase. There's several items that are attribute to this increase. Salary increases of about $800,000 and made up of step increases, longevity, wage increases, and additional staff due to enrollment. Substitute costs have an increase of $247,000. Contracted transportation costs have an increase of $235,000 due to the anticipated need of one additional special education bus and displaced student transportation, which includes CYF placement students and our homeless population of students. Tuitions for special education out-of-district placements are a cost of $44,000 and a 5% increase in medical premiums at the cost of $917,000. Goal number 2, compliance with OPEB and pension contributions. Our state pension contribution is $133,000, and that's a 4% increase. Our OPEB contribution has a decrease of $78,000, 22%, based on the actuarial valuation. And the municipal pension has an increase of 6% at $103,000. Goal number 3, consideration of future budgets. The FY21 budget development was developed keeping in mind and predicting its expenses in upcoming years. After several years of level funding, the school department does anticipate requesting an increase in appropriation from the town in future budgets, beginning with FY21. And goal number 4, supporting education programming in the school department. This budget meets the requirements under all regulations, federal, state, special education, and the BEP. It meets state graduation requirements and provides additional vocational and alternative pathways for our students. As a result of the continued support from the town council, the school department has been able to increase opportunities for students over the years. And as a result, we have seen notable successes in many ways. We've increased the number of pathways for our high school students to a total of 7 approved programs at this time. And I remember way back in 2015 when we were talking about our budget and our concern about students going out of district and the cost for out of district place tuition payments to students. We talked about increasing our pathways, and we've done just that to this total. We have our Facilities and Operation Management program, our Academy of Finance, we have Computer Science, Pre-Engineering, Music Visual Arts, Media Broadcasting and Journalism, Music Performance Education, and we're really excited about 2 new ones that were just approved for an MET and a Bioscience program. And we're always considering other ones to seek approval from RIDE. Our graduation rate continues to rise after a spike in recent years to our latest being 92%. That's an all-time high, and that's a phenomenal number of graduates from the high school. We've seen an increase in acceptances to post-secondary programs, colleges, and universities, and we continue to get notoriety from the Rhode Island Department of Education, other districts, colleges, and other states, and even national recognition. These accomplishments not only reflect the great work being done in the school department and our continued commitment to the town, it sheds a positive light on the whole town of West Warwick as being innovative and progressive. And as always, we are committed to supporting the town in the town financial situation, as the town manager mentioned earlier in his remarks. And as always, we appreciate your past and your continued support. Thank you. And Joe Spagna's here to help if we have any more specific questions.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Joe or Karen?
Actually, I did have a question about how COVID-19 has hit your budget. And will you get that money back? I know that some of the provisions for the state money that was received allows you to pay for some Chromebooks and things like that. Do you have any idea? I mean, it's very early, I know.
Joe?
Yeah, I can open up. I'm going to open up one spreadsheet I have here real quick. They've asked us to submit through the second half of March, and I've got some projections for April. And after our meeting with FEMA and REMA that I did with the chief, the amounts have changed a little bit.
I'm just looking for ballpark. I'm not looking for exacts, Joe. Just an idea. And do we think we can recoup some of the costs that we've had to expend?
For the second half of March, it's about $61,000. And for April so far, we're at about $18,000. They say, you know, if everything I've put in here is approved and legit, we can expect 75% of that back. You know, there was a lot of time put into the distance learning, but it was all time during a regular course of a day, which we would have been doing anyway. So they only let us allow salaries that are above and beyond what we normally would have seen as far as hours worked.
And I'll just add, that's actually an excellent question. And I'll go back to the word the town manager used about uncertainty, as we're, you know, it seems like we've been in this for a long time, but it really hasn't been. So as we develop our distance learning programming and servicing all of our students, you know, we're still working out ways to service some of our special needs population, some of the related service providers, in how we provide those services. So I don't know that those numbers won't go up in terms of how we service our students in full.
Thank you. The only other question I wanted to ask was your pathways. And I know you have a lot of them, and the EMT, it's all exciting. Do you anticipate, and I know that although with distance learning, maybe not, do you anticipate people wanting to come to West Warwick?
Absolutely. Joe, we're up to how many in?
Right now we have 11. When the budget was prepared, it was with the it was 9 current at the time of the preparation, and I assumed 3 new ones. We've already gotten 2, and we haven't even started fiscal 21 yet.
So every year we see more kids being interested in our pathways, and as we committed to from the beginning, the pathways, our students will have access to them first, and then as students show interest, we'll allow kids into the programs that'll be tuitioned in. But you bring up another really good point regarding distance learning. Our kids now that either go to another district for pathway, or the kids that come in, they're still in those programs, and we're still providing that those programs digitally. So even if distance learning should continue, pathways are still in play and access to them, and we're prepared, and we're already delivering that instruction remotely.
And have we lured any of our students that had gone elsewhere back into the district?
Yes. I don't have that number, but I don't know if Joe does.
I don't have that right at the top of my fingers, but yeah, we definitely, there have been several students that have left and come back.
For different reasons. Some kids find that the commute to a different district is too long. They don't want to be on the bus that long. Some decide it's not the program they wanted or thought it might be. Some kids, the reality is they'd rather be in their hometown, in their home school with their friends and part of their home school community. So it's been, I think when it first kind of, expanded a few years ago, kind of the excitement and the newness of it was an appeal for a lot of kids. And there's still kids that go out, but I think that kind of the small, and I'll be honest, it didn't spike as much as we thought it would in those first couple of years, and then it kind of leveled out. So over the past couple of years, it's been a consistent number of kids that have been interested in going out of district. And like we just said, we're starting to see more kids wanting to come into our district.
Well, I don't have any other questions on the budget, but I know you guys have done a tremendous amount of work, Karen, you and your team and all the teachers. And I know it's been tough on parents. And I hear a lot about how West Warwick is sort of out in the forefront in distance learning and doing a great job. So hats off to all of the teachers, administrators. Great job.
Well, I appreciate that. As we all know, it was an abrupt jump into distance learning, literally, days notice to jump in. So, I'll just comment back saying, we really do have a good team, and everybody has really worked hard. And again, with the support of the town council for several years now, we had the technology base in place to jump in, which has not been the case in a lot of other districts. So we're fortunate to have the support for the technology we have for several years now. So thank you.
And I'd just like to piggyback on what Councilwoman Williamson just said. You guys do a phenomenal job as a father of 3 who have already gone through the system, and a son who's presently there, especially under these present conditions, and also as a teacher who understands it from the inside. West Warwick's doing a fantastic job. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Councilman Licciardi, I know you want to.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to, Karen, Joe, thank you for a very detailed budget, which it's very easily understandable. And I'll also piggyback with what Councilman D'Amico and Councilwoman Williamson said. I'm actually becoming a teacher during distance learning. It's and we all had to jump into this, and no, I think
Oh, we're losing you, Jay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
The one question I have, though, I want to be prepared. I know last year when everybody voted first, the first voted, the budget went down, and then it came back to us. If I'm not expecting it, but I don't want to be caught off guard. If this happens again, would you be able to cut from some of that 800,000 if needed? And I know you haven't come to us in 5 years, so.
Well, at this point, I'll just say that there's no fluff in the budget. Everything in there is needed and required. Again, we'll just have to see where we land. If that's the case, we'll just have to assess. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty right now regarding
there is.
the budget, and so we'll just have to assess. But I can say with certainty at this point, there's no extra in our budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
Yeah, kind of on what Councilman Licciardi said, and this isn't necessarily on the school budget, but the whole budget in particular. I think it's going to be a tough sell come the budget vote because of everything that's going on and the uncertainty across the board. So I just think we have to do our job and look at this budget as close as possible. And I know Ernie and Kristen put a lot of work into this, but I think it's going to be a tough sell because a lot of people are struggling right now. So I'm not saying I'm against it either. I think we need to look at it really closely.
All right, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the school.
Karen, I have a question.
Thank you, Karen.
Oh, hold on one second.
Quick question, David. So this might be jumping the gun, but in terms of budgeting, have you thought ahead? Should the commissioner and the governor decide that maybe they need to go to some sort of double session in September?
But again, you know what, John, that's a good point. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, we're not sure what's going to happen with summer school in terms of why. And so September is certainly out there as to we're waiting for some direction and guidance. I have considered all of those possibilities. If there's a continuation of distance learning, if we go back in person, full time with everybody, the governor's been clear that there will be guidance and guidelines around social distancing for 12 months.
Right.
And yeah, I've thought about, what that might be absent any guidance at this point, and double sessions, who knows?
Right.
Certainly
thought about it.
Part of the conversations and, all going into it always with our budget in mind and the town's budget and the financial situation in town, and what's going to be best for kids and families, and we'll just see what happens as it comes along.
But it's going to be a challenge.
We need to work together on the budget and what needs to be in place for the school department in the town, maybe more than ever.
I agree.
Karen.
Yes.
Are you just curious, if school doesn't go back the way it normally is, where everybody goes to school, the buses run and all that, are you given options, or is this like across the state, this is what we're going to do?
Well, that's what we don't know, Jason. Right now, it's not an option, as we all know.
Right.
We were, directed to provide instruction remotely. Moving forward, I don't know if there'll be options or not. What I would imagine is that the governor will come out with clear guidance, like she has already, around social distancing, the economy. People have had to close their businesses for the time being. Very clear direction from the state. And I'm imagining that when it's time to make a decision around what schools are going to do, there will be the same very clear direction, guidance, and boundaries. Okay. But we have not been given any yet.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the school department? Again, thank you to the school department, Joe, Karen, school committee members, Rainey Cuckoo and Joseph DiMartino, who are here tonight. Thank you for working hard on the budget. I know when your budget was fairly voted on, none of this was going on, or it was just starting up. So we have definitely seen some change since our budgets have been formatted and entered. So hopefully we can figure it out, and hopefully the taxpayers can understand what's going on. It is a tough time for everybody. The town is trying to work with taxpayers to help them with their taxes with relief and postponing out a month. So, the town will do what it can, and hopefully we'll drive in the end.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks for your support.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Fire department. Chief, are you ready?
Ready as I'm going to be.
I know you're running the meeting. You're doing double duty tonight.
Yep. So, so just quickly, our budget is going from $909,246,894 to $9,882,212. The majority of that, $597,000, is contractually from the last negotiation. And although if you look in the salaries, it's negotiated, in our budget last year before the negotiation had ended. So a lot of, it was a 2% increase right away in July, 2% in January, 2% in July coming up, and 2% in January again going forward. So that is, so the salaries itself is about $300,000. In addition to that, the ancillary things like the longevity goes up by about $30,000, holidays went up by $20,000, and the only other additions were to our budget were mostly for the fire stations that need some work. We have not really maintained the stations as well as I would like to see, and they really need some work coming up. So that is another addition. So through the year, last calendar year, we responded to over 7,200 runs. We've consistently increased the runs. This, with the COVID responses, we're over 70 runs that we've had with the COVID. We instituted a couple of programs. One of the programs was a Narcan distribution. So all of the fire stations, if anybody needs Narcan, they can come into one of the stations and be shown how to use it and be given free samples of Narcan to help protect someone. In addition to that, over the course of the year, we had to buy a ladder company. Ladder was out for several months, and it ended up being out for almost 6 months. And about 2.5 months through that, we did go out and buy a ladder company with your approval. We also now just are in the process of ordering a rescue company. All of that money comes for those vehicles through the rescue billing, and it's its own fund, and is sustaining and is on track to be able to cover the needs of the fire department. So that's really all I have, very brief, but if you have any questions.
Chief, how some of those things that you mentioned, also I just want to point out, like that ladder truck, you saved us a lot of money because of the actual cost of that ladder truck. It would be crazy if we would have let that go on for the money that they were asking for. So, again, I know you've been very frugal in your budget, but also taking care of the men and, I don't think we have any ladies, but men and women of the fire department. The only thing that usually comes up is how are we looking at overtime this year?
We're going to be slightly above on the overtime, I believe. I'm predicting about 5% over is where I'm anticipating. We do have some offsets with a training grant that we have. The money is has been coming out of the overtime budget. I think we've replaced most of that. It's a 90-10 split as opposed to the COVID that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's a 75-25 split. The training grant is a 90-10 split. So we've had about 20 officers go through officer training. We had 12 individuals in a fire department instructor class that was interrupted with the pandemic. So those are offsets that will be going against the overtime budget. As I have it as of today, we're about 16% left in the budget year, and we're at 11%, which is that actually comes out to 5% right there. So maintaining that, I think, will be good. And also, in the past month, I'm predicting about $40,000 that will be for reimbursement for COVID expenses from members that were quarantined. That should be reimbursable.
Any questions for the chief?
I have a question, David.
Councilman D'Amico.
So, Chief, can you explain in further detail what the truck bay bulletin board system is? And is that replacing something or is that new? And then I guess I would want Ernie to follow up with why he's eliminated it from his budget.
Yeah, so actually the Director of Communications, I think, is on. I'd like him to address that if he would. You on, John?
I am on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The bulletin board system's part of our computer-aided dispatch system that we employed about 5 years ago. It's an add-on to that. What it would do would, each station would get somewhat of a large screen TV, their general area. So when that station is dispatched to a call, the main purpose of it is that call will pop up on the screen. It'll give direction. It'll actually pinpoint the GPS on the screen, and it'll actually give the run number and all the information pertaining to that call to the guys before they go out the door. It's just another tool for the guys. They'll look at it. Other things that can be done with it is training bulletins can be sent down to them. Training dates and times can be sent down to them. Also, who's working can be sent down to them. So it's just another tool for the guys to have in the stations. But the main gist of it is that when a call is sent to a certain station, the GPS pops up, a pinpointed mark will come up on the thing. It'll actually give them a heads up as to where they're going, and all the data that's associated with that call will be displayed in the station before they even get into the truck.
Okay.
We have been adding to our pre-fire data plan. The company's been going out doing inspections, loading the information into that CAD system.
Ernie, what are your thoughts on it? You have to unmute, Ernie.
Yep. Much of the information discussed is relayed to the dispatch or, through radio to the responding engines. In general, the requests of the departments were, I think, $2.5 million. Well, what was cut was $2.1 million. So looking at the system, saying, there are some advantages to it, but, other expenses in the fire department seem to be more critical.
Any other questions from the council?
Actually, the only question that I have, fleet maintenance, Chief, it looks like through the end of March, we're way above budget, and yet we went back to $70,000 in this year's budget. Is that reasonable? We had an unusual year?
We had an unusual year in that the ladder that did break, it cost us just a little over $30,000, which is 40% of that budget.
Okay.
The high 40s, for that one item.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else have any comments for the chief or questions?
I have one question for the chief.
Sure.
And this may have been something you were talking about on my end. You were breaking up. So if it was this item, then I apologize. Where it says alarm radio computer, and this might have been something that John Batella was talking about. Last year we adopted 37,000. Now we're up to 102.
So part of that, I believe, is the contract with RCC. A portion of that budget is going to be going to RCC for that $160,000 or $180,000 budget. So we put money, I think, in a few departments in order to not put any strain on one department.
Right. How much is coming out of yours?
I defer to Chris. I think it's 40. It might be more. I believe it's 40,000.
Kristen, I'm trying to unmute you, but you're not unmuted.
I think, yeah. You've got to unmute yourself. Yep.
I know.
All right. Hold on 1 second. $30,000.
30,000. Okay.
That's still almost a double what it was last year. I just want to know what it is.
So in your book that you received in January, if you go to the fire tab, I provided a detail that Jeff provided to me of everything that makes up that $102,000.
Yes. And
you go to the book, it's tab 17.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the chief? While we're on you, chief, we'll go to EMA then.
Okay. So EMA has been very active in COVID. Sean Henry had been the deputy director, and he did a great deal with the hazard mitigation plan. He since has moved on to a different job, and that spot now is being held by Tom Sinersha. Tom has been in the town for a long time. He is he's been at many incidents that I've been at. He gives a lot of himself, and so I appreciate his help. We've got a group of about 8 people in the EMA. They've been assisting the school department in the program that they've been doing. They have run warming shelters in the winter, not this winter, but last winter, and cooling shelters in the summer. They helped at the beginning of the COVID pandemic and ran a flu shot clinic. So they've been very active in the community, and that's about it. So any questions about that?
Going back to EMA, Tom Sinersha, even when he wasn't on EMA, or he'd still show up and he'd still always assist. So definitely a great asset to the community. And I know it's been a little hectic for you lately with everything going on. I know you've been trying to, John Patello and Joe, these meetings, taking time away from yourselves to help us, help the community. So thank you once again, and thank you to your department. You know, when they signed on as firefighters, I'm sure they weren't expecting a big pandemic to come out, and you know, this has definitely been a change for your department. Also, you know, kudos to your group for what they've been doing.
They're working hard, so thank you.
Actually, yeah, you guys have done a great job. Same question that I asked the schools. What kind of money can we expect to be reimbursed for our EMA expenses? And so, I assume.
Yep, it's 75% is what the grant model is. And I've got about $40,000 in like overtime expenses. We did have one member that tested positive. So he had contact, he had just worked the day before. So he had contact with 7 other individuals, so they all had to be quarantined. In addition, we had 3 other members that had contact with positive individuals outside of work that still needed to be quarantined. according to the Department of Health's guidance. So that's all we're going to be putting in for reimbursement on all of the overtime expenses for all of those individuals. In addition, we've spent about $25,000 on equipment for the COVID, and we'll be looking for reimbursement on that. So that I have about, in the first initial submission that we put in, I believe we put in for about $270,000. Not sure exactly how much of that we got back. That was in March, toward the end of March, and they were asking us to predict what our expenses would be to the end of March. I believe Kristen could probably speak a little better about it, but we're one of 8 communities in the state that actually got some money from that first round. So we are getting ready to submit the second round for the month of April.
We didn't get any money yet from that. They just
Okay.
wanted to get an idea of what was coming their way, I think.
Right.
But what we did get was in our rescue billing account from the Department of Health and Human Services, because of Medicaid, we did get about $27,000 to pop billing because of our Medicaid rescue ones. So that was unexpected.
And Ernie and Chief, I know you guys have been on these calls, and you know, Councilwoman Williamson brings up a good point about reimbursement. Has anybody brought this up on the federal side as far as the reimbursement from FEMA or whatever not taking as long? For instance, we'll use the 2010 floods. We received that money in 2019, 2020. Has anybody brought that up? And, you know, because we are a community that probably can't afford long-term loans per se, but, you know, is there a timeline for that?
Well, the calls that I've been on haven't brought the issue up of how fast, but if we see what's happening at the federal level, you know, they are trying to push funds out, you know, as a result of the coronavirus to small businesses, other entities, hospitals, larger businesses. So if that model is followed, they should look to reimburse cities and towns in a much quicker fashion, because everyone knows that the states and cities and towns are taking a tremendous shellacking on its revenues and expenses. You know, and at the federal level, they're talking about providing aid to the states and cities and towns, counties, and for expenses in the next major stimulus package. So if that whole philosophy of trying to get funds out to the communities that desperately need them because of the impact of the coronavirus on services and expenses, they should be quicker. But, you know, it remains to be seen. I know.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't mean to cut you off, Ernie, but didn't the governor say something that she would be announcing later this week? Some more announcements about the local municipalities.
Yes, I think that she's going to be giving more directives, you know, for reopening of different facilities. You know, if you have parks, beaches, marinas, those are going to be part of what's going to be discussed. And at the local level, what we're really looking for is some guidance as to, you know, for communities that have financial town meetings or referendums, you know, are there any alternatives to what we currently do? That's a big concern. When will the state legislature meet and adopt budgets or talk about that to give cities and towns an idea? Is there a mechanism that cities and towns can borrow short-term funds if necessary, you know, rather than having to purchase our tax anticipation notes? Can there be a funding source, like the state borrowed $300 million? Can the cities and towns borrow short-term funds to cover a potential shortfall until budgets are adopted and tax bills go out and can be received? So I think that's the type of guidance that we've been looking for from the governor's office, as to, you know, how can we operate, doing the business we have to do, the requirements we have to follow when we have various restrictions. in place. Now, the state did receive the half of the $1,250 million, so they have that, and they were awaiting. They had some guidance from the federal government how that could be spent, and by now maybe they have the other guidance on how that can be spent. So again, the League of Cities and Towns have been very active, working with the governor's office and other state agencies on behalf of the cities and towns, trying to make our needs known as far as reimbursement and what we have to deal with. So to make a long answer short, we don't know, but if the fundamental belief is we have to respond quickly to restore the economy and assist businesses, entities, hospitals, clearly cities and towns and the state are in that boat. So that message is out there, and hopefully they'll respond quicker than, you know, the 10 years from the last one.
Yes, hopefully.
Actually, one more question. Chief, how are you on PPE?
So we started planning very early. I wasn't able to speak at the last meeting, sorry, but we've started planning very early and placed some orders in early February. They were even back ordered then, but we did get delivery in beginning of March, like the first week of March, before we actually had any runs. So we compared to our the other departments in the area, we're well stocked.
And just
so no pressing needs?
Not at this time. The only pressing we really had were the face shields, and the school department stepped up and gave us something. A couple other companies stepped up. Sound FX and I remember the other one, Lacerda. They all stepped up, and we have a good amount of face shields now, and then N95 masks, patient masks. We're comfortable right now for a surge over the next couple of weeks if we do have a surge.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Town and planning. Mark, I'll unmute you. There you go.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay. My budget's pretty self-explanatory. Tried to level fund just about everything in the budget. So the only increases are in salaries and benefits related to salaries, which were across the board for all of the non-union employees. I think there was a resolution approved by the city council. So that's the reflected increase in the planning budget. Everything else is pretty much level funded. The only items that I really have any control over are supplies and expenses and consulting. And you can see I brought those across to $3,000.
Any questions for Mark on planning? Thank you, Mark. We'll go into town engineer.
And this is the budget that I prepared. And again, it's very, very simple. One of the areas that, you know, it doubled from, you know, 20,000 to 40,000. And this is for additional services that may be above and beyond the scope that the town has technical expertise for. And again, we're fortunate to have, you know, our director of public works is an engineer, a civil engineer, so that's really a great asset to us. But there's going to be times where special needs or special items are going to be necessary for projects. And one of the things that we've noticed that, you know, when we do go out to bid and proposals on some bigger projects, we may need to look at hiring a consultant to help with the management, you know, the specifications and the administration of the program, similar to the wastewater treatment plant and the sewer department. They use a consulting engineer, Jim Jeremiah, to do a lot of their work as far as the process goes, from developing specs, reviewing, recommending, construction management oversight to closure. And there may be situations coming up that the town may have to look at that model for special projects. In fact, there's one now that we're looking at that we may need some a little bit more expertise on than what the director has, is either time or the experience factor to do. So it was basically to bolster up the ability to use a consulting engineer as needed. And again, we're fortunate because with, we can piggyback on, actually there's a contract with the sewer department for Jim Jeremiah and Associates, and we can piggyback on that as well. And there are times where, the building department has used them for looking at projects that are going on, reviewing plans, and responding to technical areas for expertise. So the intent is to just add a few more dollars to give us the ability to reach out for specialized skills when we need them.
Any questions for Ernie? Thank you, Ernie. We'll move on to zoning.
Yeah, again, their budget again is a very small, minimal budget for the running of the board and the assistance necessary for the meetings, and pretty much that's it. A very small budget there.
That one's pretty easy. Any questions for Ernie on that one? Ernie, will you be doing personnel also?
Yes.
Personnel.
All right. The personnel budget has increased from the prior year. There is an inclusion for a part-time employee to assist with the clerical work of the office. And as we look at the needs of the department, again, and the analogies that everyone is probably sick and tired of hearing about, but again, when you look at an organization, if you compare it to a structure, a building, a house, you need a strong foundation to move forward. And I think one of the strong foundations is the financial operations. It has to be strong so it can grow and develop. And we are at the point now where we have a strong foundation financially. We want to continue and improve and build, but that's what we're doing at the present time. And then when you look at the human resources area, that could be considered, the roof. If you have a strong foundation, you want to have a good roof so you can work on other areas as you need them. And this is a need that the town really needs to shore up with a very strong personnel director. And fortunately, I believe we have one that's interested in coming to the town. And with that strong foundation, a good director, knowledgeable director, and then that person can look at things that are just not being done, haven't been done. Some of our personnel policies, administrative procedures were, I think, adopted in 2015 and have not been reviewed or updated. We look back at job descriptions, those have not been reviewed or updated for many, many years, and some are very, very old. And we've been trying to review them as a vacancy comes into place. But that's something that's going to be very important. There are many programs that haven't been done that would be very beneficial to the town. There was a program that Blue Cross runs that, it's basically a health management program for doing things that, we all should do. There's an incentive. For example, you have a program where a family or individual, for going to regular dental checkups, going for physicals, going for preventive issues that, most of us do, but a lot don't. And if they meet certain criteria of going to certain checkups, employees can receive a stipend back, for this. And again, the benefit of the town is, our employees are the incentive to go for the regular required checkups that the town, pays for. But if you go for preventive issues, there can be a reimbursement to the employee, and the town benefits by, if something is amiss with an employee that they may not have gone, well, you can correct something or catch something really early in the process rather than late. So a lot of programs that can be instituted that haven't, a lot of management items that haven't been done. Every a good community has like double checks on things, and whereas we're working, we get very good double checks in the finance area. There aren't a lot of double checks in the personnel area. I think we need to improve upon that. Again, when you look at the focus of what a personnel department does, some of the items that are listed, but I could just go on and on and on, and we don't want to drone on, but starting from the beginning, job analysis, defining position descriptions, employee recruitment and selection, training and development, collective bargaining, labor relations, the legal responsibilities of the department. That can't be overstated because you have to be up to date on all the laws, regulations, changes. We just did that with our CDL requirements that came in. So we have to be current on our requirements because we have to do everything that every other community does, big or small. And some departments, and many our size, have more staff than we do. So, when we look at the department and we look at priorities, if our budget is $43 million and the personnel department is $170,000 total. Now, a lot of communities don't put their entire cost of a service, to run a service in the department. The town has. So when you look at the police department, fire department, any department, that's the total cost with salaries, benefits, healthcare, pension contributions. So the investment of $170,000 for a $43 million company, if you want to look at it that way, is really minimal. And I believe if it's properly done, will result in great benefit. Going back, some of the things that hadn't been done were, and again, as simple as it can be, but when we send out COBRA notices, we have to send them out on time. They need to be sent out certified. Well, they weren't being sent out certified. They were like emails. That's not good enough today. Everything has to be done in letter form and certified. So again, if the town's on top of that, people are on top of that, if there's issues of employee harassment, discrimination, if they can be jumped on right away, again, the legal compliance of something like that cannot be really the town needs to do a good, better job of doing that. I've been working on that, part-time since we have our director had left quite a while ago, and it is very time-consuming. And the preparation for cases, whether it be documentation for workers' comp case, we won one, lost one, but legal compliance for that, unemployment appeals for unemployment. If there are human rights complaints, presenting that to the town for human rights complaints, appearances for the state labor board. A lot of work and has to be done to get ready for cases like that. So it is time consuming, and if something isn't done just right, again, the town could lose in a case because all of the I's were not dotted and T's crossed. So again, it's my belief, and I appreciate the council including that back in as a full-time position. So I know you understand the issue with that. And there has been questions about a part-time person. Is it needed? The thought is if you have a part-time person that can be there to take care of the day-to-day things that are routine but time-consuming, checking in with Blue Cross about coverage or something not covered, and putting employees on, off of coverage, trying to answer their questions. dealing with paperwork for workers' comp, TDI. So if that can be done on a daily basis, and the director is free to focus on the more director type work, I think that would be a good system to have. Now, what we have right now is, the manager's secretary, administrative assistant, does assist right now. And certainly we are willing to do that. Because again, we help out where we can. And so we are doing that now as far as some of the bill paying and things. And we will continue to do that as necessary. But again, I won't belabor it. If someone can be there on a regular basis to do the routine clerical work, the director can be freed up to do things that are director level work. And again, I also will mention that without a director, a lot of the departments have had to do, especially the bigger departments, police and fire, have had to run their recruitment on their own, which they've done. And, sometimes they do well, but, if the town's personnel director could help with that and work with the appropriate person in police and fire, that will free a more command staff officer, lieutenant, captain, to do other things, that could benefit the department. So again, those are the reasons why I'm recommending a 15-hour-a-week employee.
Any questions for Ernie? Hearing none, last chance. Any questions? All right, we'll go on to town manager.
With the town manager's budget, it's basically a standard budget with one exception. During the Christmas break, I read through the charter and code of ordinances again. It's what my life is. So I was looking at that, just reviewing things, and really came across a lot of very interesting ordinances and charter provisions that are quite interesting. Now, one of the items that have been brought up at council meetings through citizens or citizens' comments is the appearance of the town. And specifically, you have buildings that are vacant. They could be boarded up. Some are, explainable. If there's a fire, it's boarded up. It's not structurally sound, but it's not it's structurally sound. You can't demolish it, but there's either insurance issues or proceeds. But there's many, many buildings that are in town that, especially on main thoroughfares, that are just vacant. And some are in various states of repairs. In fact, I remember one resident came up and made a very articulate comment about the state of these buildings. And one that's located close to town hall on the roof, they had, looked like there was vegetation growing from the roof. So again, remembering that, going through ordinances as I did, there was an ordinance that's on the books called a real estate non-utilization tax. And, it was, quite interesting. So when I looked at that, pulled the ordinance, looked at the ordinance, and there is a provision where the minimum housing officer can go out and survey vacant buildings that are underutilized. It could be vacant buildings, could be buildings that, need improvement, but vacant buildings. And upon that review, criteria can be developed, and ultimately individuals can be taxed on their vacant buildings if they don't have a plan for that building. And again, there's a whole procedure set out, and if somebody has a building that's vacant, maybe needs a repair, the town could impose I'll just read the exact quote. Imposition of tax. The town of West Warwick hereby imposes a tax of $10 per thousand of assessed value upon the privilege of utilizing vacant and abandoned property within the town during the privilege year, which the first year was January 1st, 2003, and every year afterwards. And again, I'm not sure if this was ever used. I'm not sure if members of council recall this being used, but it is a possible method to encourage some development or some individual thinking about doing something with buildings and offices-based buildings that are not being utilized to their fullest potential. So a survey would be done. Criteria could be established. You know, the highest or best use for development purposes, and the property owner will be notified, and they have the ability to under the process to submit a plan for development that would satisfy any requirements of non-utilization. And if there isn't, then a tax can be imposed, you know, for that non-utilization of vacant property. So again, looking at that, well, you know, looking at those properties, developing the criteria, I mean, that's it could be a pretty extensive position, you know, thing to do. It falls upon the minimum housing officer now. You could probably use 2 minimum housing officers. I mean, they could go street by street and just fill up citation books in certain areas that, you know, that just because of the nature of the area, you know, multifamily homes, residences, those type of things, you know, the type of nuisances that we have. But so the thought was, well, if we could get a intern that could come in, work with the minimum housing officer, develop a criteria, and look at going out and doing this survey, and then following up on the steps necessary to, you know, approach the property owners, let them know about the ordinance, and their property has been identified as a vacant property in need of utilization, and you know, just see what happens. And at minimum, at least people would know that, you know, there is an ordinance about the non-utilization, and you know, there could be a fine imposed, a tax imposed, or maybe some people may take the opportunity to think about developing their property, you know, that they may not have. So again, this is an existing ordinance, it's in place. And for, again, maybe a small investment, we can start the process to look at a way that we currently have to improve the vacant buildings that we have. And as a result of some of the feedback that has been given to me, you know, through emails that I receive, I'm sure council members and various department heads in the area receive those emails about building structures needing improvement. And it seems like something that would be worth moving on, trying for a small investment.
Thank you, Ernie. Any questions for Ernie?
Ernie, why would that be placed in your budget instead of the building official budget?
I thought this would be something that I would do, just it could be any budget I could do, because I would probably be the best apt at contacting various colleges and universities for these different types of programs and make those introductions, but it could have been any budget. No special reason.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ernie? Thank you, Ernie. And we'll move on to DPW. Don. I'll unmute you, Don. There you go.
Hi, how you doing? Don Willett, DPW Director.
Welcome to your first budget. Welcome to your first budget.
Trust me, it's not my first one. My first one in West Warwick.
Not the first rodeo, right? Yeah, I'll just make a few introductory comments, and you know, Don can take it from there. Again, this budget, two budgets really have been sort of reworked with the passage and approval of the collective bargaining agreement with our Council 94 local union. There are some new positions here, some changed positions, with the intent of trying to move the town to a more work and project-based organization. This department has done, lots of things, and, yard waste is in particular, which again is a big issue in our community and every community. So with the contract expiring with our sanitation company, Mega Limited, the current cost included a lease payment for these totes or the big bins, that you see with the one-armed trucks will take for, the solid waste and recycling. So that was paid off. So going into the new fiscal year, there is a amount coming off of that of maybe 217,000, something like that, off the expense. So going in, we could have a new contract with them or someone else at less money because we have bins in place. But again, looking at some of the issues that have confronted the town, and again, some recurring themes about work that's, done, but, maybe, not as done as fast as we want, or something comes up and a priority shifts of yard waste or bulk waste or something like that. So with this opportunity, we were approached by a competitor asking, will you go out to bid, and said, well, we're thinking about it. So of course, then we approach our current vendor and say, hey, what can you do for us? Can you help us? We have various needs that, we're doing that, maybe you can do, that you do for other communities that can free up our department employees to do other work that may be ultimately more beneficial and long standing in the department. Sidewalk repair, drainage replacement, things like that. Catch basins that need to be fixed. So we just spoke about it, and they agreed that they could do yard waste for us. So we went, go back and forth with that, and we went back and forth with bulk pickup as well. But we agreed that that function may be better kept in-house. So we agreed to do that. So in our discussions with our current company doing our solid waste, we have reached a tentative agreement, if you will, subject to council approval or ratification, where our crew will, they would be July 1st picking up yard waste along with solid waste and recycling, which they do for many communities. And our crews will be using that time, which is quite substantial amount of time, to do other projects. So that was a way to improve the services that are delivered to the our public, our constituents, the public, our users. So with that, so we're hopeful that once we get fully implemented with the confines of the changes in the contract, we'll be able to have work crews that can be utilized for construction, and then a work crew that could be utilized to do the important things, other things such as, maybe pothole repair, other things that need to be done. So ultimately, the vision is at some point having three fully staffed department with 3 crews, 2 construction and 1 to do everything, other things that need to be done. So that's the vision. And with the vision, we increased a equipment operator's position to increase it from 1 to 2. And move on improving, filling our laborers positions, because now we have the ability to recruit employees as laborers with the ability to get a CDL, not required. Because what we found is, a lot of individuals applying for jobs as for CDL required, even as a laborer, felt that they're going to be driving most of the time, and that's not the case. Most of the case, this is going to be entry-level work that's going to be done for, heavy work. Requirement is to lift 80 pounds. So with the ability to recruit those individuals, and I hate to say it, but with the economy the way it is, we will, I'm sure, get very good qualified applicants that want to work for the town for hopefully security and benefits. So, so the vision is to improve our services, and one of the biggest areas is to have our department focus on more town-related things that will be a benefit to the community. So that's the sanitation. So even though it's the same amount, close to the same amount, we're going to be getting the ability to do more work there. And then we'll also mention another personnel change was we had a vacant mechanics position. And we tried recruiting for a mechanic. We could not get any qualified applicants to apply for the salary that we were offering. Because again, they could make much more in the private sector, make much more working at a dealership garage. So because of that fact, we are recommending that a mechanics aide be created that can do a lot of work, but nothing that not a certified mechanics work to get that certification. But somebody who has the mechanical ability, the ability to learn and wants to learn, and can be an asset to the mechanics helping. And also a person that can be trained to work in that environment. And if you have that ability, mechanical ability, skill set, and desire to learn, some of the requirements, for certifications require experience and the ability to have experience. And ultimately, if somebody works out really, really well, at a certain point in time, the position for mechanic aide could be upgraded to a full-blown mechanic. Because our mechanic department does a great job. They are fantastic. I mean, they have a mindset of, when equipment comes in, it has to be repaired. It has to be repaired quickly and correctly. So when you have the public safety vehicles, police, fire apparatus, they do a lot of their own work. Rescues, they have to get in and out quickly. So the mechanics department does a great job, and this position would augment that. And ultimately, if somebody is really good and can learn, ultimately maybe work into a mechanics position. So those were, I believe, the major changes, and then Don can discuss, basically his observations since being here since December, and what his vision would be. And then, as I've always said to directors, clearly, if there is something that has been cut from the budget, I would always give the directors the ability to, if they feel very passionate about an issue, certainly to bring that forward. I'd rather have them do that than go in some other fashion. And with that, I'll also mention some of the requests that were made, I think, can be dealt with through a capital program. Because in this budget also, we can talk about some of the capital improvements and equipment that we propose that would be acquired, that would be Department of Public Works related. Because again, part of the vision is if you want people to do a good job, they need training and they need equipment. And some of our equipment, needs to be replaced. And we've gone without a piece of equipment that's been valuable. That we propose to replace with a lease. And again, I hate to say it, but there was the thought, okay, well, let's just go and buy one now. And again, I understand it because that's the way it used to be, and that's a very good method if you have a lot of money in the bank. But again, fiscal discipline says, well, we can't go out and buy this right now. Let's budget it. Maybe let's look to a lease. And can we borrow a piece of equipment from another community that can help? Can an outside vendor help do the work? And because we just don't have the funds. So this equipment that I'll mention is going to be in part of the lease we're proposing, and as well as at some point, a transportation improvement bond where we can do road work and drainage and sidewalks and that repair. So one of the items that the director mentioned, and as I agree with completely, is assessment of the roads conditions and how they would, what is the worst, get that type of data. And something like that would be an eligible expense for a transportation road improvement bond. So that could be covered under that if and when we make that movement to do that. But again, at this point, Don, if you could give your observations and your observations about the budget. One more thing I'll mention. This budget is going to be underspent significantly. Depends on an estimate between $700,000 and $800,000, based on the assumptions. I think about $500,000 of that is personnel services related, because of course, we haven't had the ability to hire employees for various reasons. And then the rest is either in commodities, equipment, things you need to work, or services that you don't provide for yourself, but will hire out for striping and services like that. So now again, finally, and I'll mute myself, and Don, and you can take over.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. I agree with everything Ernie said. We had one cut that we talked about this morning, which was the winter needs. And whenever you cut the snow budget, look out for the next winter, because it comes back in with fury. But that's one of those line items that I think everybody understands, that if we spend more than $150,000 next year, I can always come back and talk to the council, talk to the town manager. So with that understanding, I don't have a problem with that. And we've done a couple of things with our winter methods. We're not using sand anymore. So that's an immediate savings of not putting sand down. It's more effective. It actually saves on salt. So you save a little bit on salt, and it's tremendous savings on the cleanup. Other than that, as you look at my budget, you'll see I had 3 line items that I added that were not funded this year, but I also understand the extraordinary circumstances that we're under. But at some point, if we do a supplemental budget, a preventative maintenance plan and preventative maintenance program ought to be instituted, as well as catch basin cleaning and sidewalk repair once we resolve that ordinance. The biggest problem we have right now is we're even down 4 people from last year. I can barely put out 2 crews, and that's not enough to get everything done that you would like to get done. We are doing yard waste right now. We've got about 10% of the city. We've made one pass. We're going to be working in the Natick area. There should have been a code red put out today for that. And we're going to continue to drive on that. And New London Avenue, we should have all the binder down tomorrow. So maybe I'll get some of my crew time back. That's all I've got.
Just going back to trash, yard waste. Ernie, I heard you talking about going out to bid. Are we going to be going out to bid, or are we looking to extend the contract?
We'd be looking to extend the contract. In our discussions with Mega, we believe they've done a good job. We were approached by another company that said, if you were to bid it, our cost would be more than our competitors because we, do a better job. So, basically. But again, the plan would be is to extend the contract with a current provider, Mega, and then July 1st, they would begin the yard waste pickup. Now, I believe, I have to go back, you know, they're going to give us so many weeks of service. So at that point, then, you know, the department can look with, you know, we have consultation, certainly with the council, because this is, I know, a major issue. But it seems like there are times where the work is very heavy compared to other times. So I can have the work done, you know, weekly when it's really heavy in the beginning and end, a little bit less in the middle to stretch that out. But the intent is to recommend to the council an extension for our current contract with our current provider. I've asked the Director of Public Works and the town solicitor to work with our current provider to develop the language of a contract and then submit that to me, and then we'd be submitting that to the council. The target date would be the first meeting in June to review, so that you would have time if you wanted to table it, to ask more questions, whatever, so we can still do it at the second meeting in June. But that's the current plan, is to extend our current contract with our current provider, so they would be doing solid waste, recycling, and yard waste.
Any questions for Don or Ernie?
Actually, on the rubbish removal, rubbish contract, it looks like through 3/31, we're under budget. Is that just a timing thing?
I believe it is just a timing thing. When I did my analysis this morning, it shows a $75,000 under, but as you look at what the quarterly bills are, I'm afraid that that's not going to happen. So I think you're going to find that we're going to be right on budget.
And I would like to mention something while Don's here. In our budget, we're proposing to lease a number of pieces of equipment. And one is going to be the rescue that the council has approved. And the funding for that would come from the special account for the rescue service billing. And I will say, this is a phenomenal process that the town has. The individuals who recommended that and the council that put that in place, it was really to be commended, because most communities don't have this. And it's pay as you go or leases. And I will tell you that the equipment that the town has in public safety is really very good. And I think that part of that is this lease program, where you can lease out the equipment, pay it back, you know, through the lease program, and then more money comes in each year. So as you pay off a lease, you can lease another one. It is really truly something that I think most communities would love to have, but they don't. And I think they look at our equipment as, you know, I wish we could do that. So that's very, very important. That you know, they have good equipment, and that's one of them. And if you could just mention quickly the equipment that is would be under the lease. And Kristen, you have the list of that, correct?
Yep, I have it.
Right,
so under the equipment lease would be the 6-wheel dump truck, the mid-sized front loader, the hook lift, the mini excavator, the flail mower, the 6x8 trailer, and to get the most bang from our buck, we would put the new rescue in that lease, and then a portion out, the rescue's portion of the lease payment will come out of the rescue funds.
And Kristen, the amount of the lease would be what? And then how much of that is paid by fire? How much paid by?
So that, with the estimated costs that we had, it would be a $920,000 lease. Based on 7 years at maybe 3%. The rescue funds would be about $54,000 a year, and the it would be about $94,000 ish for additional lease payment for the general fund.
Okay, so again, for that amount, the type of equipment that would be coming in to help the provide the department equipment to do their jobs and the fire department to do theirs, the rescue, because that is very, rescues go, take a lot of use, so it seems like a very good investment to make.
I think actually that's a great way to do it. It makes sense. I noticed that on the capital budget worksheet that you provided to us, Kristen, there were a couple of other things under DPW. And the salt shed, I thought we had approved previously this year.
So when he gave me his budget, when I got his budget, it was January. So
okay,
he hadn't even come up with that idea yet.
Okay, so some of these things, it's an older version. Okay,
so
all right.
It was
Thank you.
Department request, and then once we got to the manager, we knew we didn't need that, so it wasn't funded.
Okay.
It didn't move on to manager.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to Parks and Rec.
And with the recreation department, again, that was another department that the town looked at and wanted to improve the service delivery to the users, the public, the leagues that use the fields, and working with our local unions through negotiations, we are beefing that department up, whereas the standard allocation of resources would be a supervisor and 2 laborers, maintenance workers that come from public works for about a little over 9 months out of the year and are dedicated to recreation. So what now we have is a recreation department that will have actually the supervisor and 3 laborers, and with 1 to be hired. So with that workforce, it is anticipated and expected that the type of the work that can get done in that area, in recreation fields, the parks, the fields, the recreation areas, and other areas of the town, can get done, maintained the way people remember it a few years ago. So our goal and objective is to improve the services there and to allocate enough resources, personnel to get those jobs done, and then to have the ability to move some employees around between public works and recreation as needed, when the situation arises. So we're hopeful, and again, as we move forward, we'll see how the new structure works. But again, the goal is, what we've tried to do throughout the budget is improve the way we do things to improve the services that the public has, the end user. And this was a major area of that. And again, with more staffing, we reduced the overtime because hopefully there'll be less need for overtime. And with the ability to approve vacation times and management structure there, hopefully we'll have the staff available that will be there to do the job when the job needs to be done. And with that, again, we are projecting to go under budget with that department, maybe about $40,000 or something like that. And again, as we move forward, we may take a look at the need to, maybe some part-time positions. Again, one of the things that, when the governor is looking to reopen the economy, reopen businesses, you switch, don't switch a light on. So now what we're going to be doing is taking the items that we need to do address and start to turn the switch on for them. Again, we have positions that we need to review, job descriptions and recruit for, which we intend to do. but we also have to be mindful of where we are at this point in time. We have regular calls with the League of Cities and Towns, who represents the municipalities. And so when we're in these calls that we discuss these issues with, our peers, and many communities are very concerned about budgets and what state funding would mean, or lack of state funding to them. And some are actually preparing for furloughs, layoffs, and some are even making cuts now because they think that they'll end the year in a deficit. So as we look toward moving forward, we'll have to look at where we are and where we think our fiscal condition is. Now, I will say that again, the current budget, and we always look at where we are currently as a barometer of where we're going. And we have made changes in projections. When we made the original projection before this happened, we were estimating, because of vacancies and other issues, and a good economy. Because when you have a good economy, your taxes are paid, your prior years are paid, you have less funds for tax sales. You have increases in realty taxes because people are buying and selling real estate. People go out to dinner more, so your taxes of meals are up. Hotel taxes, that's not big for us, but in some communities it's really big, Newport, Providence. So when the economy is good, other revenues, building fees are up. So all of those fees are up. So when we looked at the projections, we were projecting a very sizable, at the end of the year, favorable balance. But again, things are always up in the air. So now we're projecting less based upon a tail off of the fourth quarter, 4 months of potential less building going on, less meal tax, less hotel tax, which is natural. The property taxes, those were going along very well. And at this point, maybe something like $3 million needs to be received between now and the end of the fiscal year, which, is doable. We canceled the tax sale, but if we hold that, before the end of August, those proceeds can be put back into the prior fiscal year because of the accounting in our 60-day rule. So, that's, reasonable. So, we think we'll end the year in a favorable balance, which is good. And so we're not in the pressure that some communities are that is so close that they have to take immediate action. And I guess it's because of, the budgeting principles and fundamentals we do is conservative nature. So that's going to help us this year and hopefully help us in years to come. So, and then the big issue is state revenue. Now, I never knew this law existed, but if the state revenue, if the state doesn't have a budget in place, and Kristen, you're on calls with finance directors, so correct me if I'm wrong, please do, that if the state doesn't have a budget in place, they are to remit state aid in accordance with the last approved budget. Is that correct, Kristen?
I believe we're in a state of emergency.
That's correct.
Yes, if we're in a state of emergency and they can level fund state aid into the next year, which would be fine for us, but not so good for the schools.
Yeah, but would that the state of emergency when we get to June 30th, or when they're doing the budget? Because we might not be in a state of emergency by June 30th.
I would have to reread the law, but it's been mentioned a couple of times in the finance director's calls that that is a possibility, but everything's still up in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, there's probably no timetable. We talked about this today when they're going to actually put their budget out there, right? They haven't really said anything.
No, all I know is the revenue conference that they call it. It has started at the State House. So they are going over their revenues, and I guess, you know, it's a step towards, you know, figuring out how they're going to end the year and, you know, putting, you know, their budget together.
But they didn't have, I mean, if I recall, their budget last year was pretty late too, right?
Yes, it was late. Yes.
You know, so I think when you look at, you know, the town can, and cities and town can, most communities have it where their charters where cities and towns can operate on a prior year's budget until a new budget is adopted for expenditures, but not revenues. So if communities don't have large fund balances or some other issues, that really creates a pressing need, depending on how long a state budget can be or a local budget can be adopted. So our fund balance has increased, but by no means it's where it should be. So as we move forward in our budget, you know, we need to be mindful of the things that may come up very shortly.
Ernie, I just want to point out, we are on Parks and Rec. I think we should save this for a revenue and expenditure portion of the budget.
Okay.
Any questions on Parks and Rec? I only have myself, a couple of things that I'm looking at on the budget. Ernie, you said the part-timers you were looking at. This year, I already know all the leagues have pretty much canceled their spring ball, softball, baseball. So I don't, and obviously high school and middle school have cut the sports. So they won't be having to take care of the fields as much per se, making sure they cut, you know, pre-game and lined and whatever. So I personally am expecting a lot more to get done as far as like bike path and whatever. And again, I'm not running the department, so I'm not going to micromanage. But I know also, I also know that we also agreed to a full-time secretary. Have you been working on that job description, and is that going to be ready before this budget is over?
That's your question, yes. We, you know, the Recreation Department and Civic Center have split a full-time position. And, you know, the vision is a certain amount of time for the recreation function, and then another certain amount of time for another function. You know, we've got some thoughts and ideas, but now at this point is where we're going to be now looking at, you know, the overall needs of the town to see where that type of position can fit in. So that would be something that we would be looking at sooner than later, because that has to be into effect before July 1st. And because this is where the recreation, you know, it's budgeted for July 1st. But we need to have somebody move, you know, to their, you know, new department, or at least get ready to move that. So that's sort of on the radar as a sooner than later. You know, the ultimate program will work if we're fully staffed. I mean, that's the goal, is to be fully staffed and move toward that. But you also have to look at, you know, fiscally the lay of the land, and, you know, some of the coming back from the shutdown, you know, and you know, so we'll be talking about that. The governor's will be talking about how they're going to be restoring parks and recreation. And we're going to be looking at that too. And as the maximum amount of individuals who can gather at one time increase, you know, then there may be more activities that are parks. You know, this will be a time to, you know, catch up. But you know, once we have, you know, the staffing in place, or start to get more staffing in place. And I agree. I think you know, we should be able to maintain our facilities that we need to maintain. But there's some areas that we also need to look at that may not have been addressed. Some of the property that town owns that, you know, we may want to try to just maintain a little bit better, because you know, one of the complaints that we hear and we've heard is, you know, we need to improve, you know, how the town looks or images, and I think that starts with the town first. I mean, we have to maintain what we have to show that, you know, set the example. So hopefully through these measures, you know, we can have our facilities looking very well, and, you know, as encouragement to others to do that. And the upcoming budget doesn't have any money for part-time, but we have some, I think, left over. We have some for this year if we need to get, you know, maybe some people to do a little bit this year.
Thank you, Ernie. Any questions for Ernie on Parks and Rec?
I have one, Dave.
Yeah.
What is, we have $80,000 set, if I'm reading the right budget, $80,000 set for supplies and expenses. What types of supplies and expenses are in this line?
You've got a whole host of them. This is Don will back me and unmuted, but for example, we went up to one of the playgrounds and we rebuilt the boxes around it. We've replaced swings. We do fertilizer. We do plugging. We do lime. We do seeding. If you want to repair your trail, your walking trail, you got to purchase the lumber, the fence materials to do that. So they're pretty active on that. I believe we're at 71,000 for this current year.
So you're talking more
about 80%.
So you're talking more like repair work.
Absolutely. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think I've looked at a bench or a picnic table, including in front of the town hall, that shouldn't be ripped out and replaced. They're all dilapidated, and I think most of them are beyond repair. And you can carry that one step further, even bleachers, which don't meet ADA, or they're the old wooden bleachers.
Right.
I have no
I
idea
understand.
why. So I have no idea why people still buy wooden picnic tables. I think we should be long beyond that. But again, we're trying to get some of those, and we have removed a couple picnic tables. And as far as you guys have talked about doing other things, we have been, if you take a look at any of the playgrounds, they have been cleaned up. We bought 270 cubic yards of mulch, and they've all been all the playgrounds have been re-mulched. The old stuff was pulled out because it had been there for years. And so I think we're doing pretty good in that, but I've only got 2 guys in that department right now. And I've only got, we're only getting 1 or 2 work days a week because of the weather.
Tell you, I know I complained quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 months about the playground, and it looks fantastic. So I want to give you a lot of credit. Give the guys, I knew there was an entire work crew there for days, but it looks fantastic, and that's what it should look like, and it shouldn't have gone that far, but it looks great.
I can't say anything about the past. I can just say in the future we're going to try to do a lot better, actually. But again, the manpower is just the key. And I just noticed we don't have the part-time wages. I'm not sure why that wasn't put in. And I also think going from 30,000 down to 2,000 for overtime is a little bit over the top. I really think that ought to be at least 5,000 to give me some flexibility due to weather.
All right, we can keep that in mind, and if you want to send us a request via email or whatever, then we can
do
a record for the public hearing also.
Yep.
Any other questions for Parks and Rec? I think Mary Ann's only on phone right now.
I'm here. Yep. I'm here, Dave.
Yeah, I was trying to text. I was trying to text. I think we
adjourn the meeting and then go into the Civic Center meeting.
That's what I'm saying. I think we have to adjourn this meeting. Don't hang up on here, ladies and gentlemen. You can stay here. We're going to adjourn, And then so we can do it again and reconvene for Granicus for the Civic Center budget.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor on that?
Aye.
Aye. So we don't have to do anything. We just stay here. We're good.
Yes.
This
Yep.
is being recorded. You are still live.
809.